America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, on imagination, and an unbeatable determination to do the job at hand. Harry S. Truman. The Red Scare, a period of general fear of communists. In 1950, Congress, along with President Harry S. Truman, passed the International Act, or the ISA. This was the United States' first legal reaction to communism. They wanted to clearly state and announce to all of the United States citizens their thoughts about it. Many people also call the International Security Act after Democratic Senator Patrick McCarran. He was the person who said that communists were everywhere, even in power in the United States government. People like calling it the McCarran Act. This act stated that belonging to a political group that intends or conspires to violently overthrow the United States government should be illegal. This act was a foundation for many more to come. The ISA consists of 5 subchapters. Subchapter 1, Control of Subversive Activities. Subchapter 2, Emergency Detention of Suspected Security, had the most tedious time becoming a law. When it was proposed, President Harry Truman vetoed it, but on September 23, 1950, Congress decided to override his veto. It was until 10 years later when it was declared unconstitutional. Subchapter 3, Personal Security Procedures in National Security Agency, talked about hiring personal agents and having them deal with classified information. Subchapter 4 was the Communist Control Act, which we will get into more detail later. And Subchapter 5, Registration of Certain Persons Trained in Foreign Espionage System, which talked about filling out forms if you were a former spy about the penalties. For example, a $10,000 fine or your deportation. It took a complete 4 years until Congress went further in depth with how they will treat violent communists that are trying to overthrow the U.S. government. That thought was the Communist Control Act of 1954. Congress, this time with President Dwight Eisenhower, stated in the Communist Control Act that any participant in the Communist Party that is conspiring to overthrow the United States government will be stripped of his or her rights, privileges, and immunities. If you want Social Security, go to prison. There you're fed, clothed, given medical care, and so on. The only thing lacking is freedom. Dwight D. Eisenhower. The International Security Act and the Communist Control Act led to many false deportations. The Communist Control Act was not only used to attack communists, but the government also used this to attack groups that were fighting for human equalities.
Actually, it involves the rights and the liberties of 140 million Americans. If they can outlaw the Communist Party, if they can prohibit it from using the constitutional right to organize, to speak, and to assemble peacefully, then they can prohibit the rights of all Americans, irrespective of political opinion.
Many politicians tried to push the fact that groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, were violating the Communist Control Act. Many politicians and big company owners criminalized the labor unions with the Communist Control Act on the grounds that they were trying to overthrow the government by defying laws. But the most important way the Communist Control Act was used was to criminalize the civil rights movement leaders. These people include many leaders like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. Footage you are seeing is the NAACP marching on Washington to protest for human equalities. Whenever politicians stated that someone or a group that is fighting for a cause is a communist, and the politician continues to publicize it to the media, the person or the group loses a lot of credibility and, even more important, their support. Therefore, the fear of communist control in the United States has been affecting the rights of the people for many years, mainly with the Communist Control Act by the way of helping oppress fair work conditions or wages, giving African American their right to vote or even their rights at all. There's a common saying that states that history has a tendency to repeat itself. Ever since the Red Scare, we have seen our country continue fighting and making laws against communism. This is evident in our wars with Cuba and Vietnam. The fear of communist control in the United States allowed Congress to pass laws that declared war. Congress expected those wars to end communism, but it still survived, and we can now look at North Korea as an example. What will our country do next in response to the threats of communist control in North Korea? Will another war emerge? Will communists be arrested on sight and be incarcerated for life? But most importantly, will our country even survive? There are many factors that can affect what our country will do in North Korea. As many of us have seen on news channels like CNN or Fox, the North Korean citizens are rebelling on their own. This next clip is a group of people rioting in order to stop communism in North Korea. As you can see, these Korean citizens will not stand for the injustices that are forced upon by their communist government. The Korean War started on June 25, 1950. When North Korea invaded South Korea, President Harry S. Truman urged the United Nations to move their forces into North Korea. In conclusion, there are three significant ways that the fear of communist control affected the rights of citizens of the United States. First, by the Communist Control Act, where if you were even suspected to be a communist trying to violently overthrow the United States government, you were stripped of your rights. Second, it was used to resist the civil rights movement and its leaders, or keep rights from African American United States citizens. Third, the fear of communism started wars like the Vietnam War, where young men, or even boys, were involuntarily drafted for war. The only thing left to know is how it will affect our rights in the future.